Did the boys finally go too far? You know, I think at first glance, the big headline coming out of this episode, of course, is that Kessler has been in Butcher's mind all along. And we're going to talk about that. Fantastic reveal. But now that it's been over 24 hours since the episode dropped and the initial shock has worn off, you know, I think a lot of people's first reactions to the Tek Knight Hughie stuff was, what did I just watch? I think a new headline is starting to emerge. And that's, as I said, did the boys finally go too far? You know, I'm seeing a lot of really interesting conversations about trauma and assault. And I think, you know, somebody highlighted this interview with show creator Eric Kripke. And as you can see, you know, when you take the assault mental health perspective on the Hughie Tek Knight scenario, it catches even Kripke off guard because he just thought they were doing something, you know, crazy and funny. And because that's been this show's calling card. And they've gotten very close to the line a number of times, and they've always been able to come back from the brink of it just in time. But on this one, I think what they didn't realize is that this one involves an unwilling participant. And that's a very serious situation. And that just totally changes the context of the scene. So I've seen the rest of the season. Even though Hughie is traumatized at the very end, I believe that the writers are saying that's more to do with his father passing away than what goes down in the tech cave, because at least this season, it doesn't come up again. And in fact, you know, you might not be so happy with actually, now that I think about it, you might have some problems with how the rest of the season maybe plays out. Let's see. I think that the boys has been so laser focused on pushing the edge of the envelope and political commentary that I think that if they're going to go down these roads and have these really intense situations, let's say, they do need to bring someone in who's a mental health person to kind of give that perspective to make sure that they're being responsible. They need to treat those scenes, the scenes that deal with those elements, as seriously as they do the political ones. And that's also very interesting because they were a little bit more haphazard with the political stuff at the beginning of the show as well. And they've only started to take that more seriously as the show has progressed. So I think they're writing season 5 right now. I think it would greatly benefit them to bring somebody like that in to make sure that they don't do this again, because it's a great show. I really still love the show, but this is a black eye on it. And I hope that while this interview caught Eric Kripke off guard, I think it might behoove him to speak out on it and to see that he hears people's concerns, and that, you know, as I said, they're going to hire somebody on the writing staff to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But I would be curious to hear your own thoughts down below. I think people are making really good points about it, and I think it's important to listen to them. Okay, so the Kessler twist. So many of you guessed this. In fact, many of you guessed it on episode 1. I saw some of the comments. Well, not episode 1, episodes 1 through 3, the first day that the new season started. And I saw on my breakdown video some of you already guessing this. And I was like, damn, they guessed it already. Now, I don't know if it's because I got to binge the show. I watched the entire season like in 2 days. But I was totally surprised that Kessler, you know, was revealed to be the devil on Butcher's shoulder opposite Becca's angel. They got me, and I loved it. It was a great reveal. When Kessler turned on Becca, acknowledging her, I was as shocked as Butcher. But I wonder, for those of you who had guessed so far in advance, was it weird watching the Butcher and Kessler scenes week to week, since you already knew what the big reveal was? It was weird for me covering them because I didn't want to give away, for those of you who hadn't guessed, what the big twist would be. And I wasn't quite sure how to discuss it because those scenes are very bare bones. Maybe that's part of what gave it away. You know, there's not too much else there. And they were always just the two of them, right? So I guess when you guys were saying it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess you can kind of easily put 2 and 2 together. But so I was like, how am I going to discuss this without potentially giving it away? And then also I thought it would encourage more of you to write in the comments down below, you know, what you had guessed was happening. So we haven't talked about Kessler at all. So I could try and maintain that surprise for as many people as I could. But now we can. All right, so Butcher has picked two people that he feels he's let down. In the ultimate way, they're dead. They're dead. One represents his personal life, the other his professional life, and obviously one is his good side and one is his bad side. Now, speaking of being divided, Kessler, and really, in reality, it's Butcher saying this, but Kessler tells that story about coming back from a dark ops mission and having to play civilian, and how Kessler realized that the civilian was the lie, and the dark ops person who does these intense, horrible missions and tortures people, that was who he truly was. And so, when Butcher hears the story, he feels sorry for Kessler. And he's like, look at all the crazy stuff coming out of this guy's mouth. Yeah, you can't pick who you work with, whatever, man. But all those things were what he said, which I think there's one thing that Kessler said, of course, which is, I think, the most haunting, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I also want to point out that speaking of the dark ops missions, Kessler reveals that he never did make it back from one of those missions that they were discussing, that he died on that mission, that Butcher left him there. He just left him to die. Now, knowing what we know of Butcher, I agree with MM. He's a mofo, but a mofo with a heart. I don't think he left Kessler to die, but I do think, knowing Butcher, that he feels that he did. So I think that's very well written, but I'm sure in reality that Butcher did everything that he could. Now, when Butcher realizes that Kessler is also a hallucination, not only does that make it clear how sick he must really be, besides all that black sludge he's throwing up, right? But as I said, he realizes that every horrible thing that Kessler has said has really been him saying that. And of course, it's what he said about Ryan. Kessler said that if Ryan can't be turned to the good side, he must be killed. And that means that Butcher is the one who thought that. And both the angel and the devil are obsessed with Ryan. Kessler, feels if he's not with us, he's against us. And even Becca says, it doesn't matter if you kill Homelander because you're just going to have another one to deal with. They're saying the same thing in good and bad, positive and negative ways. So Butcher, he's got very little time left and he's so far from being able to rescue Ryan, he just feels like it's an impossible situation until a solution suddenly presents itself, and which also leads to the Kessler reveal, because this is endgame stuff, baby. So Dr. Shaw finally confesses as to why he doesn't want to create a stronger version of the virus. And that's because a stronger version that could kill Homelander would need to be airborne. And therefore, there would be no way to control it, and it would kill all soups on the planet, including, for Dr. Shaw, his girlfriend Newman and their daughter. But then also for Butcher, that's Kimiko, Starlight, Maeve, who of course he grew close to, Homelander, which is the big in the pro column and pros and cons, but then also of course Ryan. Now Kessler, who at the time of this reveal Butcher thinks is still real, jumps at the opportunity. He's like, let's do it. This is it. But Butcher hesitates, with Becca telling him, don't do it because Ryan, and also, do you really want to be the person who is responsible for a genocide? And that's the moment that Kessler reveals himself. Because as I said, this is endgame. This is what Butcher has been working for his entire life. We've heard him say it on this show. He wants to get rid of all the soups. And then finally, right at the last minute, before he's going to punch his clock, or punch his ticket, I forget the metaphor, here's the opportunity to do it. He will be able to succeed before he heads through the pearly gates, although I don't think he's going up top. But yeah, so he would be able to die knowing that he got it done, which is why Kessler, the dark part of Butcher, wants it so bad. Ryan be damned. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So then again, when Kessler reveals that he's actually Butcher's dark side, Butcher realizes that a part of him would do this, would do mass genocide, is a monster. And, but I still don't know if Butcher should be so hard on himself. Because remember last week I said to you, is the combination of Temp V and Compound V, which Butcher has admitted to putting in his own system and trying to save himself, does that make the subject angry and vicious, like it did with those farm animals? Although maybe those farm animals just wanted people to stop laughing at him. We'll talk about the Deep and Firecracker in a moment. But back to Butcher, I think that when he was just seeing Becca, it was a way for him to feel really good about himself. Like there is still a connection to her, like the best part of his life. And maybe in some ways it was a ghost. her ghost, and that he was not a monster, that Becca was like his soul, right? Either like she's standing for his soul, like he was really a good person, like he thought he just had a Jiminy Cricket. And then, as I said, maybe it was her spirit from the other side. But now he knows that none of it's real, including the good stuff. He's still all alone. He's all alone with, the saying is with your demons, but obviously an angel and a demon now. But it's not real. He's just arguing with himself. He's just arguing with the different sides of himself. He has no connection to Becca. There's no ghost. There's no hint that maybe she's waiting for him. And then also, maybe these two people never forgave him. I think the fact that these two people that he felt that he let down or with him now, they're ghosts, he thought Kessler was alive, but that they forgave him. Because, he's having a big problem with forgiveness with his team. And, in Butcher's life, people have always come back. They've always been like, oh, you all right, you crazy bastard. And so I think he felt, well, with these two people who I didn't get their forgiveness, oh, well, now I have. But now he's back at square one. He didn't. And he's just more alone than ever. It's a huge emotional gut punch. It's really well done. I thought it was excellent. And so not only does he have an angel who's a lie, but a demon inside of him, but he also discovers that demon is capable of taking over his body. Yes, Kessler reveals that in the trailer, when Butcher blacked out, it was Kessler who took over his body and killed the soup, right? A total loss of morality, allowing Butcher to do things that he literally does not want to know that he's doing, thus the creation of an alter ego and blacking out. Now, some of you have said this is a take on Venom, and maybe to some degree it is, but remember, Venom is a separate entity. It is another person. This is all Butcher, so he bears full responsibility. So it's a lot more serious. I really like it. I think that while the character of Butcher seemed like he was running out of road, people were like, okay, we're done. Some of you feel the same way about Homelander. And I think just like with Butcher, I think by the end of this season, you'll feel they definitely have the one more season left in them to go. I think this opens up a whole new bunch of interesting things to explore with Butcher in the final season, especially after you see the final 2 episodes of this one. Now, as for the Deep and Firecracker, they both make excuses for their horrible, violent behavior, saying that they really just want respect, which is sadly why a lot of people really do hurt other people. But remember, you're not getting real respect. And in fact, you're getting mofos like Butcher who are trying to figure out ways to take you down behind your back. Real respect creates loyalty. For more than just a whack job or two, right? Like Firecracker for a Homelander. But this is why overall Homelander can't get any real respect either, because he's also using fear. And why also when A-Train reluctantly drops MM off at the hospital, he didn't have a heart attack, turns out just a panic attack, but still, when just that little boy sees A-Train, just the two of them, that's it, A-Train finally feels like a hero, the hero he was pretending to be with his nephews. It feels so good. It's what these characters have been looking for, and it's hard to do, you gotta actually earn it, but it's the pure actual thing they've been looking for, which is wonderful writing, because just last week, Ryan was saying this is what he wants to do. He wants to really save people, just like A-Train just did, and instead of these fake saves. And so I think it's an excellent connection to be drawn. And sadly, Homelander doesn't realize that this is not only where true power lies in being a real hero, but also the love and adoration that he's been programmed to crave. This is where it actually is. But Homelander, he's barreling down a different path to get power, and that is his and Sage's plan to stage a political coup. And they need important politicians and businessmen to back them up. For instance, the Republican Speaker of the House is at this fundraiser, who is, of course, next in line for the presidency in the United States after the vice president. So it goes Singer, Newman, and then this dude. Long story short, this is basically the boys' take on the real-life Project 2025, which is trending as we speak on Twitter. In fact, there's a person in charge of Project 2025 who's named Vought, which I believe is what Vought in The Boys is named after, interestingly enough. All right, so anyway, the 1%ers here, though, do bring up a good point that Project 2025 does not. And, that is how are you going to handle the stock market, right? How you can do anything you want to government according to this strategy, but, I guess it's a little bit of a silver lining. You're like, maybe the financial collapse will be enough to keep everybody from doing horrible stuff, the threat of financial collapse. All right, here, Sage, though, is in dumb mode because MM shot her in the head while he and Starlight and Kimiko were trying to save Hughie. So Sage is unable to help with the presentation, and Homelander decides to try and do it himself, and he can't. He can't do it. So Newman steps up and saves the meeting because earlier she and Sage also had a conversation about respect. But while the white characters, the Deep and Firecracker and even Homelander, are up front in their violence to get respect through fear, Newman and Sage, as women of color, feel that's a short-term play. And they instead go for the long-term play, where they play along with those disrespecting them until they can, violently seize that position themselves, which is literally what Newman does during that meeting when you think about it. But the only problem is that Homelander's still there, and he is not happy with how things just went down, because suddenly the star of his coup is Newman, instead of just being one of his pieces on the board. So very interesting. But also Firecracker has another ace up her sleeve, or make that 2 under her blouse, because I told you that medication does induce lactation. And while Homelander stresses that he is not at all attracted to Firecracker, that actually works out great, because hello, she's his new mommy figure. And of course, he's won over by her extreme show of loyalty. She says that medication only enlarges her heart a teensy-tiny bit. And Homelander, I think that extreme loyalty, he's able to confuse it with the love of a mother. So it sells the mom fantasy even more. So that also is really well done. Also, Kimiko is trying to get into prison to visit Frenchie, but he refuses to see her. Now, I continue to think that these storylines for these two characters do not serve them well. But I will say that Karen Fukuhara did a wonderful job breaking our hearts in these sequences. I mean, it was just beautiful. I just felt so bad for her. And Black Noir reveals he can fly. I wonder how that will come into play. Don't get your hopes up. As I said, I've seen the rest of the season. It will factor in, but not too much. All right, so what is going on with the Tek Knight situation? So I don't want to get into too much detail on it because of the sensitive subject matter, I feel it's disrespectful to what's being depicted. But we'll talk about what it means for the season overall, like the Homelander and Sage's plan. All right, so Tek Knight's family, he says, this is generational wealth. I thought that was interesting when Firecracker mistook it for, his entertainment salary, having that show for Vought. And he's like, no, you can't get this wealthy doing that. But, his family owns prisons. By the way, private prisons are a very bad idea in real life. So I'm glad they called that out here. But even more so, Homelander and Sage want to use those prisons to hold anyone who stands against them during their coup, to hold them and to lock them up. So Homelander and Sage aren't just staging a coup, but they want to create a military state. And that just shows that this is an even more, it's like when everybody finding out about Project 2025. It is a much more serious situation than everybody thought. So that really makes the boys understand, like, this is not like just who's in charge, but it's going to fundamentally change the world and how it operates. For so long, people have been like, who cares who's in charge? Another 4 years, we'll have another election, and how much damage could they possibly do? And you're like, what? So that's kind of what they're creating here. So wow, a lot going on in this episode, and potentially a big misstep by the show. We'll see. Do you think they can recover? How serious? I mean, I think it's serious enough that something should be, done about it, and the show cannot afford to do it again. And I do worry about some plot points that I know that are coming up very quickly. So we'll see. I think we'll see what happens. But also, what do you think about the other things that happened during this episode? All right, share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.